Good morning. Before we get started, we have a brief message for our Spanish-speaking residents. Jose?
Buenas tardes, soy José Landaverde. Esta reunión informativa es también transmisionada en español en la página de Facebook del Condado de Sonoma. Esta es una actualización sobre los incendios en el este de Santa Rosa y el Condado de Napa. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this joint news briefing by the County of Sonoma, the City of Santa Rosa, and CAL FIRE. My name is Paul Gullickson, Communications Manager for the County of Sonoma, and this is Monday, September 28th. And we are in day 2 of the glass fire, which started at 3:50 a.m. yesterday, Sunday, in eastern Napa Valley. By Sunday night, 2 new fires had sprung from the glass fire on the western side of the valley on the slopes of Spring Mountain. The shady fire quickly spread from there over the mountain into eastern Santa Rosa and into Sonoma Valley. And that is the subject primarily of our discussion today. For an update on this portion of the glass fire, we will begin with CAL FIRE Chief Ben Nichols. Chief?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Paul. As you indicated last night, we had an explosive fire growth of the glass fire that was able to establish a foothold on the west side of the Napa Valley and burn approximately 4 miles during the course of about 6 hours overnight to where it finally ended up this morning in the community of Oakmont and trying to push into the Annandale State Park. The fire has been extremely difficult to contain in the fight to date. The country that we're working on in the eastern portion of the fire, for those folks that are familiar with the Palisades, it's a very rocky, steep ridge line. And so our bulldozers are struggling to construct the line out there. Luckily, we've had plentiful aerial support in the firefight. However, with the size of the fire that we had prior to the winds showing up last night, the fire was able to gain enough energy to create that spotting scenario where the fire came out and into Santa Rosa. So we had damaged and destroyed structures last night. Overall, the firefight was organized by an aerial, a night air attack that is a tool that we've been using the last couple of years to give us that bird's eye view during the cover of darkness, where in, say, for instance, 2017, we lacked that tool in our inventory. So having the night air attack last night allowed us to regroup the resources and gather them in and around Oakmont and Rincon Valley to make the stand that we needed to make to protect the most amount of structures possible as the fire front came down into town. Today, the wind being up by this afternoon, evening, they should be much diminished from what they were at the peak. However, we will still be underneath a red flag due to the hot, dry conditions. So those conditions will remain in place for the remainder of the week. And so we caution folks that while it may not be being pushed into town at this point, we'll get back into a scenario like we had with the Wall Bridge, where we have the normal winds and we'll have an opportunity for wind, fuel, and slope alignment to create more significant fire runs. I notice a more active portion of the fire out at the end of Sharp Road or just south of Sharp Road, in between Sharp and St. Helena Road this morning. So we're keeping our eyes on that and making sure that that's the priority for the west zone. So the fire will be broken up into an east and west zone, similar to the LNU Lightning Complex. And the county line will be the dividing line between the east and the west zones. The fire is currently 11,000 acres. We expect that number to grow as we get better mapping with daylight after the run last night. However, the Incident Management Team 3, one of our 6 incident management teams, has come into the unit, and they will be transitioning to take command of the fire at noon this afternoon. So some of their lead elements are already here working with the unit, and we have double shifted the bulk of the resources that are on the line today due to the statewide drawdown stretched out amongst the now, I believe, 27 major fires burning throughout the state. With that, I'll call it end of report.
Thank you very much, Chief. Now we're going to go to Santa Rosa Fire Chief Tony Gosner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to tag on to Chief Nichols, we work very closely with CAL FIRE, Sonoma County Fire District, as early as 8 o'clock last night. Once we realized there was an established fire above the hills of Santa Rosa, we quickly transitioned to opening up our EOC and pushing out evacuation warning messages and essentially recalling the entire fire department to support the activities that we felt were coming. Earlier today, we spent 4 strike teams and task forces to Napa County to support the fire that started the day before. Once we knew there was an established fire in the hills, those resources were sent back. So we had additional 20 units that we could use for structure protection. Thank you for that, Ben Nichols. And then also we institute a county all call. So where we activate everyone's pager that's in the fire service and ask everyone to respond to a staging location so we can form up strike teams and task forces and put them to work, knowing that our community was going to be endangered of this fire. So we did that twice actually last night. The first all call brought us 5 or 6 strike teams and task forces. The second all call gave us a few single increments, so we didn't quite get 5 pieces of equipment to make a task force or a strike team, but we put those into play where we needed. The main bulk of our activity was off of Los Alamos Road. That's where it started early, and then as the night grew into early morning, around 4:30 in the morning. A lot of activity for Calistoga Road. So from Highway 12 to say Badger Road, we had a lot of fire coming down the hill with very heavy winds impacting structures. So we put a lot of resources in those areas to protect those structures. The same thing happened in Oakmont at the same time, essentially. We also had equipment in Oakmont to deal with that. Although Oakmont was impacted for a longer period of time, there were dozers and engines that were working along the Highway 12 corridor in between Oakmont and Highway 12 to protect that community. The other aspect that we were working closely with CAL FIRE on was we knew it was close to getting into the Annandale State Park, so we were really kind of keeping an eye on that. What that means to us is with the winds that we could experience today, we could have some problems on the Summerfield Road area. Therefore, we instituted the evacuation order early this morning to remove all of those occupants from those areas. As we sit today, I don't know how many structures were lost throughout the firefight last night, but there was significant loss between Los Alamos and Oakmont on the north side of Highway 12. A lot of those little ranchettes and homes in there. Very difficult firefight up Los Alamos and Cougar Lane. And then in Skyhawk, we lost a few buildings in Skyhawk as well as on Calistoga Road. And I believe 1 building in the Oakmont area. A lot going on all at once. I will tell you that the firefighting crews did an excellent job of being flexible and we had the ability to put them where we needed them to make the most good at that moment. With a fire like this, I can't stress enough that there is never enough resource to do what you need on a fire like this. So as much as we scraped to get as many resources at many levels, you only have so many, and so we use them to the best of our ability. At that point, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate all that you and CAL FIRE folks are doing. Let's, for updates on evacuations, we're now turned to Sergeant Juan Valencia of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. Juan?
Hello. Thank you for having me. So right now out in the county, we have a total of 12 zones that are under an order and 1 zone that's under a warning. So we want to remind people that when you do get that Nichols and you hear the high-low siren and the knock on the door, deputies or law enforcement officers telling you it's time to leave, it's time to leave. Unfortunately, we did have some people that stayed behind and might have been burned in some areas. So it's really important that we listen to public safety, firefighters, law enforcement, that it's better that they leave. That way we could sit there and do our job and not have to go back up there and rescue people, which deputies were doing last night. They were going back up to Los Alamos Road after people were refusing to leave and rescuing people out of their houses. So that's something that's preventable. That's something that we all need to step up and take charge and action and let the fire department go up there and fight the fire and keep everybody safe. We're getting notices out as soon as possible. We're working closely with Santa Rosa Fire, Cal Fire on messaging, getting information out. We're staying ahead of it. We're trying to notify people as soon as we can. And again, a reminder, it's fire season. Even though you're a zone, the area you live might not be under a warning, the thing is have a go bag, have materials ready to go in case you do get under that warning, or if you feel unsafe because of traffic, gridlock, stuff like that, then you know what, it's better to leave early and go somewhere out of the area. That way you're not tied up in traffic. And there's a lot of stress and anxiety right now going on with all these multiple fires going on in the county, fire after fire. So, and unfortunately, we're getting a lot of good experience with this messaging. And we're working closely, again, with all our allied agencies on the messaging. We are here for you guys. We understand it's stressful. And just, again, I can't stress it enough. Just when you get that Nichols, when you hear the high low, it's time to go. I have nothing else to report at this time.
Thank you, Sergeant. Those are important reminders. We appreciate it. Next, we'll hear from Santa Rosa Police Chief Ray Navarro. Chief?
Thank you, Paul. So I just wanted to give a brief update of what's going on here in Santa Rosa from a law enforcement standpoint. Last night, as a result of the fire emergency, the police department called back our entire sworn staff. We had approximately 130 officers assisting in evacuations, traffic control, and in the emergency and emergency operations center and department operations centers. We were able to use the pre-planned evacuation routes and the traffic control plans to mitigate some of the issues during the evacuation. We did see a lot of traffic congestion on Highway 12 for about an hour to an hour and a half, which eased up after the initial evacuations. In addition to the evacuation efforts and traffic control, several of our officers were able to assist by using garden hoses to help put some of the smaller fires out and really to save some houses until the fire departments were able to come on scene to take over. I want to thank the mutual aid who came to our support to evacuate our community and assist in traffic control. We have been continuing to do additional actions to make sure that we are keeping our areas safe. One of the things that we're doing is moving to an emergency schedule to make sure that we have the proper staffing to address the burn areas and the evacuated areas, and also address the calls for service that are going to be coming in on a daily basis. We've also requested mutual aid to come in and assist with roving security checks of the evacuated areas. We have 11 evacuation zones that are currently in place, and to make sure that you're aware of what those are, you can go to srcity.org/evac zones. You can find all of the mandatory evacuation zones and the warning zones there, so you know what might be impacting you. I also want to remind residents not to re-enter the evacuated areas until notified by the city that it is safe to return. And then also traffic is going to be very important. It's important to keep the roads open so emergency personnel can go to where they need to go, so the firefighters can get to these fires. And also traffic lights might be out and electricity might be out. So if the lights are out, make sure you're driving safely, stopping at the intersections, and just be careful while you're out there. We're all in this together, and we're gonna get through this. But we need everybody's help to make sure that they're safe by staying out of the areas. If you're in a mandatory evacuation zone. With that, I think I'll end there and wait for questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. As one who was stuck in that traffic for an hour and a half, I'll tell you, it was handled well, and it flowed smoothly as possible. Speaking of slowing down, we are reminded to help out our interpreters to talk slowly as much as we can to just help them out in their translation. So we'll now hear from Santa Rosa Mayor Tom Schwedhelm. Tom?
Thank you, Paul, for inviting me to participate in this. And I also appreciate the order in which these speakers are going, because you've heard the most important speakers, those frontline workers who are saving this community once again. So I really appreciate it, because everyone else on this call, it's our job to support those frontline resources. And so I just want to give some overviews about what we are doing to support the frontline workers. I also want to thank our community for heeding the evacuation orders and warnings early and quickly. This has helped public safety to get into the areas they need in order to try and protect property. Again, this isn't our first rodeo experiencing this, and I think everyone now understands we have to work together to do this safely and effectively. This is a very active fire, and so I must ask that you continue to do your part to stay out of evacuated areas to allow our firefighters to keep doing their jobs. The safety of Santa Rosa residents is our #1 priority. For those who are evacuated, I want to make sure you're connected to the latest information. The city is providing updates on our emergency website at srcity.org/glassfire. Evacuation orders and warnings, temporary evacuation points and shelter information, as well as current road closures can all be found there. These resources are available to all evacuated residents, regardless of immigration status. The city of Santa Rosa is also utilizing Nichols and our Facebook and Twitter pages to provide community updates. Please rely on these official sources for information and not other social media resources. Whether you are currently impacted by the fires or watching with concern as this emergency unfolds, please take care of yourselves, your family, and your neighbors. These are physically and emotionally difficult times, and you don't have to be immediately impacted by the fires to be feeling the strain. Now is the time for us to come together once again as a community to help each other. And I want to thank the Congressman and State Senator McGuire, who has already reached out to members of our staff to see what the federal government and the state government can do to help us through this time. I also want to remind everyone, for non-emergency information and resources, please dial 211 and an operator will assist you. And finally, if someone you know is experiencing emotional stress and anxiety, a warm line is available for free and private support. Please call 707-565-2652. And that number is available 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mayor Schwedhelm. Much appreciated. And next we have Susan Gorn, Chair of the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, and a resident of Oakmont, who is certainly no stranger to what it's like to lose a home in a fire of this kind. Chair Gorn?
Sadly, Sadly, that is true. And my heart goes out to everyone who lost a structure, a home, a barn in the fire. When I learned about the fire last night about 8 o'clock, my heart stopped because this was an area that was unburned in the Tubbs and the Nuns fire 3 years ago, almost exactly to the day. And I knew that that beautiful area was ripe for a fire. And again, it did. The virtual backdrop that I have in back of me, it was taken at the top of Mount Hood on one of our hikes. That is not smoke, but it's fog that had dissipated during my journey on the hike. And sadly, Mount Hood is in flames again. I really want to thank our first responders, police and fire. As I was evacuating Oakmont, it took me a long time to get out of Oakmont, but police, Santa Rosa police were all over Oakmont. And I know the traffic control was handled efficiently and effectively as can be on narrow Highway 12, given the fact that once again, Highway 12 was cut off by the fires. And also our incredible response from the fire folks, both CAL FIRE and Santa Rosa Fire, for holding the lines and losing minimal structures in Oakmont, but I understand at least one was damaged, maybe destroyed, and all of the homeowners along Highway 12. The journey begins for you as it did for me almost 3 years ago. And please reach out to me, susan.gorn@sonoma-county.org. My team is ready. We're experienced with this. We've done this before. The county is experienced, sadly, and we will help you through this journey. But I can't urge more strongly, have patience. Heed the words of our firefighters and police officials. Do not attempt to enter into the evacuation zones unless it's safe to do so. Please, if you don't live there, definitely don't go into those zones. And we will provide more information to all of you when it is safe for you to return to your neighborhoods. I'm anxious to get back into my home and my community just as rapidly as possible, but I take the word of our first responders. Thank you once again, everyone, for your support during this challenging time once again.
Thank you, Chair Gorn. We're also very happy to have Congressman Mike Thompson with us, who represents this part of Sonoma and Napa County that's being hit by this fire and is a resident of St. Helena. Congressman Thompson, thank you for being here.
Well, Paul, thank you for inviting me, and I too, my heart also aches for everyone who's been displaced, who's been injured, who's been evacuated, who's lost property. This is just one more year of the same thing, and it's getting a little old. However, I look at the screen and see all of you. It's a pretty remarkable team that we have working on behalf of everyone to make sure that they stay safe. So thank you all very, very much. I just flew in from Washington because of this fire. I came back to be here. I want you to know that this morning, the federal government, FEMA, authorized the fire management assistant grants. That means that the federal government will pick up 75% of the cost. That's locals still have to do 25%, but that 75% is a big help. And I have legislation, as I think everybody on the panel knows, that I introduced during the last fire that we have to bump that up to 90%. State and local governments are really hurting right now. And this is a big chunk of change to fight these fires and to keep everybody safe. So I think it's most appropriate if it's a fire on the West Coast or a hurricane on the East Coast, if it's a natural disaster and declared such, that the federal share of that should be 90%. On the way up to my office from the airport, I had a long conversation with the head of FEMA for our district, Bob Fenton. You all know him well. FEMA under Bob's direction has really helped us a lot over the years since we've had these problems. He expressed his concern and sorrow for what's happening and wanted me to know that anything that he can do, he'll be there for us. And as we know, he really didn't have to say that. He's been here for us at every step of the way. Please heed the warnings from first responders. A number of people have mentioned it today. Have your go bag ready. Have whatever valuables that you feel you need to take with you. Have it ready to go. And when you get the word to go, please go. Don't think about it. Don't try and stay back. You not only do you put yourself in danger, but you put your neighbors and our first responders in danger as well. So as the mayor said, we're all in this together. We're going to get through it again. So thank you all. A special thank you to all of our first responders and all of you who are on this Zoom and all of the staff that makes things work smoothly. And know that I'm available for anything at all that I can do. And thank you all.
Thank you, Congressman. Much appreciated. I'd also like to welcome Supervisor Shirley Zane, whose district includes the heart of Santa Rosa, and she has some things she'd like to share too.
First of all, thank you to all of you. Boy, it's almost like you want to start saying we've got to stop meeting like this, because about every 2 months, here we are again. And as Congressman Thompson said, it is really getting old. And there's a lot of both grief and trauma and anxiety out in our community today. Again, as Mayor Schwedholm said, I do want to encourage you to use that mental health warm line. It's there for you. And there's also another line I did want to share with you, because a lot of seniors need more assistance right now. And we do have a great assistance line at the county for seniors. It's Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. And the phone number is 565-4636, 565-4636. You can find that information too if you click on senior services on the socoemergency.org. It's a great website. We're constantly updating it. I did want to share that I wanted to thank the city of Petaluma and Peggy Flynn, the city manager, and Supervisor Rabbit. They have set up a lot of evacuation centers down there in Petaluma. And so thank you for that. They are full, I understand, and that there's going to be more opening. But what I wanted to highlight was that if you are a licensed facility, either you are an assisted living center, maybe a memory care, board and care, residential care, you must have a plan for the people in your facility. And that means you don't just drop them off at the center. You bring in their medication, you bring in the staff, you do whatever it is to take care of them when they are at those evacuation centers. The senior task force for COVID, we are going to be checking up on this. We want to make sure it didn't happen like it did during the Tubbs fire, where too often seniors that needed a higher level of care were dropped off at the evacuation centers without the staffing. So again, I would ask you to heed the portion on your license under the California State Code that talks about assistance during emergency disasters. So be sure and have that in place. And if you're a family member and you have seniors that are in the evacuation sites, please know also that the place where your loved one lives must provide the care that they need while they're there. Okay, thank you very much, and stay safe, and boy, we'll get through this again, Sonoma County.
Indeed. Thank you, Supervisor Zane. Before we go to questions, we have another brief message for our Spanish-speaking viewers. Jose, you want to take care of that for us?
Definitely. Si nos acaba de acompañar, esta reunión informativa está también transmisionada en español en la página de Facebook del Condado de Sonoma. Para el enlace de la presentación en YouTube, por favor, si está esta actualización sobre los incendios es del este de Santa Rosa y en el condado de Napa. Gracias.
Thank you, Jose. So just want to remind our media partners that if they have a question to raise their hand, and we will be calling on them. For those watching on Facebook Live, you're welcome to post a question. If you have something that you would like to have answered, please feel free to do that and we'll try to get to you. But we'll start with Guy Kovner. Guy?
Unmute. Hey, are you hearing me?
You're on.
Hey, good morning. Let's see, I don't see Ben Nichols there. Is Ben still?
Yeah, he's there. He's here.
Ben, I wonder if you could tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned a night air attack last night. I wonder if you could elaborate on what that was, where it was and what it did. And then also want to know about the air attack situation this morning. Our information is that the poor visibility has grounded the air attack on the Sonoma County side of the fire. Thanks.
Sure. So the night air attack is the same OV-10 platform as the rest of our fleet. But because we're not dropping aircraft, we're not attacking the fire with aircraft at night, that aircraft is flying at a higher altitude and is our eyes in the sky for what the fire is doing. So they're able to use an onboard mapping program to estimate where that fire is at and be able to communicate to ground resources, changes in fire behavior and more active areas so that we can make sure that we have the resources at the most critical points of the fire. As far as the air visibility today, you are correct. We were flying early this morning. However, now due to the visibility across the fire area, I haven't seen a fixed wing fly in quite about an hour. So it's going to require the air visibility of the airspace to clear up a little bit before we can get aircraft back up and safely start combating the fire from the air.
Thanks.
Before we go on with questions, I was remiss in not going to Chris Godley, our Director of Emergency Management and the head of our EOC, for a situational overview. Chris, do you have an update for us?
Sure, very briefly, everyone. With the fire starting at about 7 p.m. last night, the county's Emergency Operations Center was activated just after 8 p.m. We immediately began conducting alert warning messages, with the first message going out at 8:30 p.m. We have now completed 28 warning messages, targeting evacuation zones 13 in the county, 15 in the city of Santa Rosa. There are now a total of approximately 48,500 residents subject to either to evacuation orders or warnings at this time. Subsequently, shelters were developed by local staff, cities, as well as the county. At this time, we have 5 active shelters, sheltering approximately 350 individuals. Please note that those numbers are relatively low at each site because of the COVID-19 protections that need to be in place. A local proclamation of emergency was signed this morning, and we have received a federal management or fire management assistance grant, or FMAG grant, from the federal government. Focus is right now on community sheltering, community information, and community engagement, identifying where are the gaps, where are the points where resources can be brought to bear, either government or community-based organizations with whom we're partnering. And I urge everyone for updates to go to the SOCO Emergency, or SOCO emergency.org website for updated information about current conditions, shelters, resources, as well as, of course, the big map that shows where the fire evacuation zones are currently, as well as where some of the fire behavior is being observed currently. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. Let's now go to Julie Johnson. Julie, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. For Ben and Tony, you both touched on this, but I was hoping you could a little bit more clearly state where the fire is going today, what you're planning to protect, what neighborhoods are at greatest risk. And then also, if either of you can say about how many acres in Sonoma County are burning right now.
So Julie, for the overall complex at this point, the fire as a whole is 11,000 acres. I don't have a broken for you specifically by county, but I can tell you that the larger portion at this point is within Sonoma County. As far as communities at risk, the wind will continue to push the fire into Annandale, and the concern is over the top Independent Valley and on possibly toward Jordan Park. However, as Chief Gosner can probably articulate better, being on the other side of the hill at this point, the winds are not what we were seeing last night. So it's giving the fire a chance to stand up and not be pushed towards those community bases. So taking the opportunity and breaking the winds to construct a critical control line with bulldozers, hand crews, engine companies to contain the fire to begin the process.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that, you know, the fire is manipulated by the slope and the wind, and every spot on that fire acts a little differently based on those conditions. So Calistoga Road is a concern. Oakmont is still a concern. Annandale State Park into Bennett Valley is a concern. And really the concern is all of those giving us challenges at one time. That's going to be very difficult to deal with, knowing that we only have so many resources. And that's just what's coming into Santa Rosa and the Sonoma County Fire District. And then you got the fire on top of Diamond Peak, and you got different things at different spots of the fire. So there's many challenges as we move through today. But like Ben stated, we have an opportunity when this fire stands up to kind of put it out and make sure we're doing what we can with the time that we have. Thank you.
While we have you and both chiefs focused, the one question was, and maybe this is for Chief Navarro and Sergeant Valencia, a number of people from our audience are asking whether we anticipate any more evacuations today. Anybody want to hazard a guess on that?
Well, I can tell you from the city, we are working very closely with the fire department in a unified command. And we are in constant discussions and in conversations with the county to evaluate the safety of our community. And so we look to the information that's coming from CAL FIRE and Unified Command and all of our partners to make those decisions. So I don't have any information about additional evacuations at this point. I can tell you that we have just put out 3 additional evacuation warning zones in East 1, East 2, and East 3 for the city of Santa Rosa. And we're waiting for further information before we make any additional decisions.
Okay, and just a reminder, you can go on the City of Santa Rosa website to see those maps if you're not familiar with those zones. And those are also available in socoemergency.org.
Paul?
Yeah.
And for the counties, kind of the same thing as Chief Navarro said, working closely at Unified Command with CAL FIRE. And also we just want to remind people that to follow us on our social media platforms, which is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And all our information is bilingual. And also, if we're going to send out NIXL information, the WIA SOCO alert, notifying people if they are in that either under an order or evacuation warning. But just want to remind people, it's 2020 and it's very unpredictable, and fire's unpredictable. You're hearing that from the experts. Just have stuff ready, which will ease a lot of the anxiety.
Yes, very, very true. Okay, let's go to Donald Morrison. Donald, you're up.
Hello, everyone. I'm with the Wall Street Journal at the LA Bureau. And I am wondering, I saw that local news media had reported that there was structural damage in East Santa Rosa. Can anyone confirm that there are structures that have been damaged over there?
Yes, we've had structures damage on Calistoga Road, off of Highway 12 and Los Alamos Road, and in those communities around Los Alamos Road, Mountain Hawk. So we have had some structures damaged within the city.
Okay.
Just to follow on with what Chief Gosner was saying, our damage.
You're muted, Ben.
Try again to unmute.
I'll jump in for Chief Nichols. One thing that CAL FIRE will do is bring in damage assessment team. So CAL FIRE's damage assessment team will be able to help identify whether or not it was a home, an outbuilding, a barn, a commercial building. And that process will be coordinated with both the county and the city for their respective agencies. So as soon as there's accurate official information, we'll work with our partners at the City of Santa Rosa and County of Sonoma to get that information pushed out. But we do acknowledge that there was a number of structures, both damaged and destroyed, but the official process will take some time to get the damage.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Donald, did you have a follow-up question?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we're good. Let's go to Joseph. Joseph, you have a question?
Hey there, thanks. This is for Chris Godley. Wanted to get a sense, just because the pandemic is restricting capacity at these shelters, what services are available right now? And, what are you guys doing in terms of overnight sheltering in case it comes to that and folks need a place to stay overnight tonight and going into the coming days?
So it's a great question, because it's no good to flee the threat or hazard of fire only to be presented with an unsafe environment for COVID, especially for our more vulnerable populations. So to that end, we're offering smaller congregate shelters, if you would. So instead of having, say, 400 people at a shelter, we might top it out at maybe 95 to ensure that we have social distancing, but also adequate resources where we can decontaminate supplies and equipment appropriately. When individuals arrive, of course, they receive a medical screening to determine if there are any symptoms that could suggest that they may be containing the virus, at which point they'd be diverted into our medical system. We're also offering non-congregate shelter settings. That is, for those that are most at risk with underlying medical conditions or other challenges, we're deferring or moving people away from a congregate setting and placing them either into hotel rooms if they're especially acute, and we're also looking and are currently working with Sonoma State University to open some of their dorm rooms that would allow for more people to attain that non-congregate shelter setting. So at this time, our numbers are very low in each shelter, and we're continuing to expand shelter options. In addition to the 5 or 6 we're running right now, we're also trying to develop 2 additional shelters that allow us to continue to expand service offerings while maintaining COVID protections.
Okay, let's go to Joseph Cerna. Joseph? Are you there? I think we lost him. Okay, let's go down to Kate.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Hi, sorry. It's Joe Sterno with the Los Angeles Times.
Oh, hey, Joe.
My questions for the chiefs were, did this fire burn at all in the footprints of either the 2019 Kincaid or the 2017 Tubbs or Nuns fires? And if so, how did that impact the fire behavior?
So it's an excellent question. It's one of the last it was one of the last remaining areas in the county that we did not have recorded fire history for. So there was a much greater accumulation of vegetation on the landscape than we have in other areas in the county. So that most definitely contributed to some of the extreme fire behavior we saw under the burning conditions that we had as the fire came into Santa Rosa. With that, I have to attend the team transition meeting, so I'm going to have to go. Chief Gosner is more than capable of answering it.
I did have a follow-up on that then.
Yeah, go ahead.
If this was one of the last areas that was untouched, could you provide a date? I guess if we were looking for a ballpark, we could say that the last time it burned or did not burn in this area, if there's a way to provide a ballpark for that. And secondly would be, if this was one of the last areas without a fire history, does that mean that potentially the fire risks are mitigated going forward if a lot of this area has been touched by fire in the last few years?
Chief Gosner, could you hear the question?
Yeah, no, I got it. So there is no fire history, so we can't tell you the last time it burned. I'm sure it burned at some point in the history. We just have no history of it as we're in the last 100+ years. And this fire did help with clean up some of the forest as it burned through. But I'll just remind everyone that grass grows back annually and brush grows back pretty quick. So while it did burn very rapidly because it had not burned in a long time, no record that we have, CAL FIRE has, it did also burn into the nuns and the tub scars, and it burned just as well there because that has been filled in with light flashy fuels like grass and some new brush. So every year brings a new challenge. The grass burns much faster and it's much harder to control when it's pushed under those types of conditions.
Thanks, Chief Gosner. This is Susan Gorn, Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and District 1 is my district. And indeed, the fire started and roared through an area just between the Nuns Fire and the Tubbs Fire in an area so beautifully rich in vegetation. But because it was heavily vegetated, the neighbors along St. Helena Road formed a fire safe council and were well on their way to working on some of the strategies to contain the fuel, reduce the fuel, and absolutely engaged in community preparedness and alert systems. So I'm anxious to see if their efforts were at all effective in the fire moving forward in that area. But I would also note that 2 state parks are in flames, and these are the state parks that were burned in the fires 3 years ago: Hood Mountain Regional Park and Trione Annandale State Park. So those areas were recovering slowly, beautifully, and now they're in flames again.
Yeah. Very true. Okay, let's go to Kaylee Tournay.
Hi, I wanted to see if I could get the capacity and some information about what services are available for folks at the Veterans Center in Santa Rosa.
Sure, this is Chris Garley. I can tell you for the Santa Rosa Veterans Memorial Building specifically, our capacity is just 86. It is currently full at this time, at which point people can obtain direct services there, of course, food, some medical evaluation, as well as minor medical treatment, as overnight sheltering as needed, especially if they have medical condition, we can accommodate using ADA types of equipment. We're also able to provide mental health counseling and advice, as well as connect individuals with social services, the county social services network, as well as most importantly, those resources that are currently coming online or have been online since our most recent fire through our community organizations that are organized through a collective called the Community Organizations Active in Disaster, or COAD for short. It's really working out well for us there. But of course, with COVID, we're not able to use that facility to its maximum occupancy, but that's why we're opening other locations, hopefully potentially further north in the county as well.
My follow-up is, and thank you for that information, it's helpful. My follow-up is, what's the best way for people to stay updated with, where these shelters are opening? I looked at an alert from the city of Santa Rosa earlier, and I noticed that the Memorial Center, the Veterans Memorial Center, actually wasn't on the list of the temporary evacuation points. So I guess I'm curious, what's kind of the best place for people to get updated information about where they can go?
Oh, absolutely. The best location is the socoemergency.org website, socoemergency.org, or socoemergencia in Spanish, .org, at which point they can obtain information about not only the evacuations, but additional information. This also includes where shelter locations or evacuation centers are located. Individuals can collect on that, and it actually will give them the list of places that are open at this point. It's important to note, for example, at this point, we're not listing the Santa Rosa Veterans Memorial Building because it is at occupancy. So we're not going to give people a source that can't actually support them at that time. So it's a constantly dynamic, changing set of resources.
Okay, Mary Callahan.
Hello there. Hi, Tony. I don't know if you, well, hopefully you can answer this, but I'm wondering, do you guys have some ideas, or Paul, about where you're hoping to build lines, where you're hoping to make a stand? Are there obvious areas at this point, like Calistoga Road, or perhaps points farther south that you're hoping you can hold the line?
Yeah, those are the obvious areas. So Highway 12, even though it did jump, we're building contingency lines to keep it within the contingency lines. Calistoga is holding, did cross St. Helena, so they're building contingency lines around the slop over there. And right now we're evaluating where at Annandale Park would be a good spot to either create put a dozer line in as a fire break, right? And then fire off of that if we need to, or just let the fire come to us. It depends. So I don't have any specifics on Annandale, but all the hard places like Highway 12, Calistoga, St. Helena, those are the ones where we try to box it in and keep it from crossing those man-made barriers.
And are there any kind of wind shifts or anything like that coming in? I understand that is the red flag warning still expiring at 9 p.m.?
Yes, at this point, it is still expiring at 9 p.m. and the wind shifts can happen without a red flag warning. So, we have our daily wind that comes in almost every day, the same way, same time, same speed. And then with this fire weather, the winds are coming at a different direction, sometimes the opposite direction, and with different characteristics. So, we can have the fire can be pushed by normal seasonal winds if everything lines up right. So we always look at weather, and we always look at relative humidity, and we look at where the fire is and what we can expect by the fuel load in that area.
Mm-hmm. At this point, the wind conditions are supposed to, apart from the seasonal afternoon upswing in wind activity and the unpredictability of that, in terms of sort of other overriding conditions, those are expected to diminish. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And then just one more question. Chris Godley, could you repeat the number of people who are under evacuation order currently, please?
Certainly. At this time, in terms of mandatory evacuations, it's approximately 33,870. And for the population in warning status, 14,624.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and our last question will go to Julie Johnson. Julie?
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to ask another. I'm wondering, I've heard this fire in Sonoma County described as, starting as a spot fire from the glass. I'm wondering if there's any more detail you can provide about that, sort of how it was first reported, whether there's any question about whether this was, you know, an electricity sparked fire or a spot fire carried on the wind.
So it was reported as a spot fire from the glass. It was noticed by an engine company on the glass fire as they were looking across the valley and noticed a glow. So once they noticed that, they notified command, and then we started sending resources up there to figure out if this was a spot fire or something else. Right now it is deemed to be a spot fire, as last I heard from the glass fire.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're gonna wrap it up. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I also want to thank Adrian Mertens, the Chief Communications Director for the City of Santa Rosa, for helping us to organize this today. We know this is a dynamic situation. Things are changing by the hour, and so our plan is to do another briefing tonight at 5 o'clock. And we're hoping as many of you can join us as you are able. And we invite our member media friends to join us and the public to join us as well. Until then, stay safe, and we will talk to you soon.